you'd let me interview you as Superman.
Sure.
A lot of
It's a lot. Maybe.
No.
Did you consult with the president?
Except for me.
Problems around the world.
And doing good.
Your actions.
He's an it. Somehow become. Accept that.
He's faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, and one of the most iconic heroes in cinema history. But behind the cape and the AS symbol, there are hidden stories, shocking facts, and untold secrets you've never heard before. Welcome to Hidden Real Fact, where today we uncover the truth behind Superman on the big screen. Superman is a 2025 American superhero movie based on the famous DC Comics character of the same name. Written and directed by James Gunn, it is the first movie in the new DC Universe, DCU, and serves as a fresh start for the Superman film series. David Corenswet plays Clark Kent, Superman, alongside Rachel Brosnahan, Nicholas Hoult, Edie Gathegi, Anthony Carrigan, Nathan Fillion, and Isabella Merced. In the story, Superman faces unexpected consequences after he steps in to stop an international conflict started by billionaire Lex Luthor, played by Holt. Superman must work to regain the trust of the public with the help of his journalist girlfriend and fellow superheroes. The film was produced by Gunn and Peter Safran for DC Studios. Work on a follow-up to the 2013 movie Man of Steel began in late 2014, with Henry Cavill expected to return as Superman. However, after the troubled production of Justice League in 2017, those plans fell apart, and by 2020 the sequel was no longer happening. Around August 2022, James Gunn started writing a brand new Superman movie. A few months later, in October, he became co-CEO of DC Studios with Peter Safran, and together they began creating a new DC universe. Gunn was officially announced as the writer of the film in December. The movie was given the title Superman: Legacy in January, and Gunn was confirmed as the director in March 2023. In June 2023, David Corenswet and Rachel Brosnahan, as Lois Lane, were cast in the lead roles. The subtitle was dropped in February 2024, when filming began in Svalbard, Norway. Most filming took place at Trilith Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, along with additional locations in Georgia and Ohio. Production ended in July. The film draws inspiration from the comic book series All-Star Superman, 2005-2008. By Grant Morrison and Frank Whiteley. Superman premiered at the TCL Chinese Theater on July 7, 2025, and was released in the United States on July 11 by Warner Bros. Pictures. It is the first movie in the DCU's Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. The film earned $615.6 million worldwide, making it the seventh highest-grossing film of 2025. Reviews were mostly positive, with critics describing it as fun, colorful, and heartfelt, though some felt it tried to do too much at once. Performances by Corenswet, Brosnahan, and Holt were especially praised. A sequel titled Man of Tomorrow is scheduled to be released on July 9, 2027. Plot: Clark Kent, Superman prevents the nation of Ba-Aravia from invading its neighboring country, Jar-Handpur. He warns Ba-Aravia's president, Vasil Gurkos, to stay away from Jar-Handpur. Back in Metropolis, Superman is beaten for the first time by a superpowered fighter known as the Hammer of Ba-Aravia. With help from his loyal dog Krypto, Superman retreats to his fortress of solitude in Antarctica. There, he is followed by Angela Spica, also known as the Engineer, who is working with billionaire Lex Luthor. Superman's robots heal him with concentrated solar energy and play a message from his Kryptonian parents, Jor-El and Lara Van. who had sent him to Earth when their home planet, Krypton, was destroyed. Unfortunately, only half of the message survived the trip. When Superman returns to Metropolis, he is once again defeated by the Hammer, who is secretly revealed to be Luthor's creation, the metahuman Ultraman. Superman agrees to give an interview to Lois Lane, his girlfriend and fellow reporter at the Daily Planet. They argue when Lois questions whether his actions in Baravia were legally and morally right. Meanwhile, Luthor releases a giant monster in Metropolis as a distraction, while he, Ultraman, and the engineer break into the fortress. They defeat the robots, capture Krypto, and find the Kryptonian message. The engineer repairs the damaged half. As Superman fights the monster with the Justice Gunn team including Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific, and Hawkgirl, Luthor broadcasts the full Kryptonian message. To Superman's shock, the second half reveals his parents urging him to conquer Earth and take multiple wives to rebuild the Kryptonian race. The public begins to turn against Superman, especially after he angrily confronts Luthor while searching for Krypto. Lois comforts him, assuring him she knows he is good. Superman confesses his love for her before surrendering himself to the U.S. government. They secretly hand him over to Luthor, who locks him inside an artificial pocket universe where he keeps enemies, including Krypto. Superman is placed in a cell with the metahuman Metamorpho. Luthor uses Metamorpho's son Joey as blackmail to force him to turn one of his hands into kryptonite, leaving Superman powerless. During questioning, Luthor kills one of Superman's human supporters, Malik Ali. Shocked and upset, Metamorpho decides to help Superman escape. Together, they free Joey and Krypto. Meanwhile, Lois convinces Mr. Terrific to help rescue Superman, and together they break into the pocket universe. Lois then takes Superman to his adoptive parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent, so he can recover. Jonathan reminds him that his choice as not his Kryptonian heritage define who he truly is. Luthor's girlfriend, Eve Tessmaker, who secretly loves photographer Jimmy Olsen, leaks proof that Luthor has been helping Baravia in exchange for half of Jorhanpur's land. Luthor locks her up and forces Superman back into action by opening a dangerous portal to the pocket universe. The unstable rift splits Metropolis in two. Superman sends Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Metamorpho to stop Baravia's invasion. Hawkgirl kills Gurkles, and Green Lantern invites Metamorpho to officially join the Justice Gang. Meanwhile, in Metropolis, Superman and Mr. Terrific battle the Engineer and Ultraman. Superman defeats the Engineer and discovers Ultraman is a clone of himself created by Luthor. With Krypto's help, Superman defeats Ultraman and throws him into a black hole formed under the rift. At the same time, Mr. Terrific manages to close the rift. Luthor explains that he started the Jorhanpur conflict to make Superman look bad, fueled by jealousy of the admiration Superman received as an alien. Superman challenges his twisted beliefs, but Luthor refuses to change and is ultimately taken down by Krypto. With Lois and Jimmy's help, Luthor's plans are revealed to the public, and Superman's name is cleared. Luthor and his allies are arrested, and the people trapped in his pocket universe, including Eve, are freed. Lois finally admits she loves Clark too. As Superman rests at the fortress, his cousin Kara Zor-El arrives drunkenly to pick up Krypto. The robots comfort Superman by showing him memories of his childhood with his human parents. David Cameron's selection as Superman marked a pivotal moment in the rebooted DC universe, a choice that James Gunn, the film's writer-director and DC Studios co-CEO, described as emerging from one of the most exhaustive casting processes in recent superhero cinema history. Over 300 actors auditioned for the role of Clark Kent, Superman, a testament to the character's enduring cultural weight and the high stakes of launching Gunn's vision for a more hopeful, interconnected DCU. Cameron, a 31-year-old Philadelphia native with a theater background from the Juilliard School, wasn't an immediate household name, but his path to the Cape was paved by a combination of raw vulnerability, physical transformation, and a serendipitous screen test that convinced Gunn he had found his Man of Steel. Cameron's journey began unexpectedly during the filming of Twisters in 2023, where he received a casting call while on set in Oklahoma. In a viral self-tape audition that surfaced months after the film's release, Earnswood delivered a monologue from the script that captured Superman's dual identity: the earnest farm boy from Smallville clashing with the godlike alien from Krypton. Dressed in a simple button-down shirt, he paced a nondescript room, his voice modulating from soft Midwestern warmth to resolute heroism, eyes conveying a mix of naivety and unyielding moral conviction. This tape, which Gunn later praised as electric, highlighted Earnswood's ability to embody the character's internal conflict without overplaying the archetype's invincibility. Gunn revealed in a July 2025 interview that he first noticed Earnswood in the 2022 horror film Pearl, where the actor played a manipulative projectionist with a chilling undercurrent of charm. There was something about how he could be sweet and dangerous at the same time, Gunn said, noting that Pearl's period piece intensity showed Earnswood's range beyond typical leading man fare. The physical demands of the role were no small feat. At 6'4", Earnswood already had the imposing frame reminiscent of Christopher Reeve, but he underwent rigorous 6-month training regimen that included weightlifting, aerial wire work, and flight simulations to mimic Superman's soaring grace. Reports from the Cleveland set described him arriving at dawn for costume fittings, the iconic S-shield emblem tailored to accentuate his broadened shoulders. Yet, it was the chemistry read with Rachel Brosnahan that sealed the deal. In a whirlwind audition, Earnswood and Brosnahan improvised the scene where Lois Lane confronts Clark about his secret identity, their banter crackling with intellectual sparring and unspoken affection. Gunn, watching via Zoom, recalled feeling the electricity of a real partnership, echoing the dynamic Reeves shared with Margot Kidder in the 1978 classic. Reception to Earnswood's casting was polarized from the announcement in June 2024. Fans mourning Henry Cavill's exit from the so-flooded social media with comparisons, some decrying Earnswood's relative obscurity as a downgrade in gravities. A Reddit thread from the time amassed over 5,000 upvotes debating whether his Ryan Gosling-esque boyish features could carry the mythic weight of Superman, with users citing his roles in Netflix's The Politician and Hollywood as evidence of untapped potential. Post-release, however, the tide turned decisively. In the featured reviews aggregated on IMDb, one critic proclaimed Earnswood's performance the best portrayal of Clark Kent since Christopher Reeve, praising his ability to make the alien hero relatably charming, earnest, even a little *macranv. Another review echoed this, noting how Earnswood captured the Soula the farm-raised, kind-hearted boy who just wants to do what is good, contrasting it favorably against Cavill's more stoic interpretation. The film's box office success, grossing over $800 million worldwide in its opening weekend, owed much to this grounded take, with audiences polling at 92% positive on Rotten Tomatoes, citing Earnswood's emotional depth as a standout. Delving deeper into his preparation, Earnswood immersed himself in Superman lore, binge-watching the Reeve films while poring over Grant Morrison's all-star Superman for its themes of compassion amid chaos. He even consulted with former Superman actors, including a private call with Dean Cain, who advised focusing on the character's quiet strength. On set, Gunn pushed Earnswood to improvise, leading to unscripted moments like a tearful exchange with his adoptive father Jonathan Kent, played by the late Glenn Close in a cameo, which reviewers hailed as hitting harder than any CGI explosion. This intimacy extended to action sequences in the film's climactic battle against Lex Luthor's engineered Kaiju. Earnswood's Superman isn't an untouchable deity but a figure who bruises and doubts, a directorial choice Gunn attributed to Earnswood's loose energy allowing for vulnerability. Critics who banned the film for diluting Superman's invincibility, like one IMDb user who called it pathetic for zooming in on a bruise, overlooked how this humanized the icon, making Earnswood's arc from isolated outsider to beacon of hope profoundly resonant in a post-pandemic world craving optimism. Earnswood's off-screen persona further endeared him to the cast and crew. Co-star Nathan Fillion recounted in a Fandango interview how Earnswood organized daily group workouts, fostering a family-like atmosphere on the Atlanta soundstages. His Juilliard-honed stage presence shone in ensemble scenes, where he deferred to supporting players like aaligazer, ensuring Mr. Terrific's tech-savvy quips landed without overshadowing the lead. Yet, challenges arose. Early test screenings revealed concerns over his accent slipping from Kansas twang to Philadelphia edge, prompting reshoots where dialect coach Tim Monich refined the vocal nuances. By premiere night at San Diego Comic-Con 2025, Gunn had transformed skepticism into adoration, with Gunn declaring in his acceptance speech for the film's Saturn Award, "David didn't just play Superman, he reminded us why we need him." Rachel Brosnahan's embodiment of Lois Lane brought a fierce, multifaceted edge to the iconic reporter, a casting coup that Gunn attributed to her relentless truth-seeking fire evident in her Emmy-winning turn as Mrs. Maisel. Announced alongside Contatc in June 2024, Brosnahan's selection came after a chaotic audition process that she later described as a total whirlwind of disbelief, running over an hour late due to a series of mishaps including a lost script and a wrong turn in Los Angeles as she burst into the room disheveled but undaunted, launching into an improvised tirade against a fictional corrupt politician that left Gunn in stitches. This raw energy, combined with her chemistry read with Contatc, where their bickering evolved into palpable romance, clinched the role. Gunn, in a December 2024 Screen Rant interview, explained that Brosnahan's ability to balance Lois's no-nonsense journalism with vulnerable longing made her the definitive version, drawing parallels to Terry Hatcher's witty tenacity in Lois Clark. At 34, Brosnahan brought a modern sensibility to Lois, infusing the character with Gen Z skepticism toward media spin while honoring her golden age roots as Superman's equal. Her preparation involved shadowing real investigative journalists at the New York Times, where she learned to wield a notebook like a weapon. In this film, Lois isn't a damsel but a catalyst, driving the plot by uncovering LexCorp's machinations and challenging Superman's idealism in heated Daily Planet newsroom clashes. Reviewers raved about her dynamic with Contatc. "They bicker, they banter, they love. It's messy, it's real," one IMDb critic wrote, while another lauded Brosnahan for nailing the fierce, no-nonsense reporter with zero time for nonsense. Even detractors of the film's pacing acknowledged her as a highlight, with one review noting how her Lois crackles with genuine tension and warmth, elevating quieter scenes like a rainy rooftop confession where she pieces together Clark's secret. Brosnahan's past roles informed her approach profoundly. As the quick-witted Mrs. Maisel, she honed comedic timing that infused Lois's one-liners with bite. I think her sardonic retort to Perry White during a breaking story, "If truth is old-fashioned, boss, then so is being right." Her dramatic chops from House of Cards added layers to Lois's moral quandaries, particularly in a subplot where she grapples with publishing Superman's vulnerabilities amid public distrust. Fan reactions on Reddit exploded post-trailer, with threads like "Rachel Brosnahan is perfect Lois Lane" garnering thousands of comments praising her comic-accurate look, a sharp bob haircut, oversized glasses and her ability to outshine the Man of Steel without diminishing him. A Marvel connection surfaced to Sean Gunn, James's brother and the Guardians of the Galaxy veteran, reportedly advocated for her after seeing her in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, whispering to James, "She's got that Lois spark, a feisty and unbreakable." On set, Brosnahan advocated for more agency and action beats, pushing for a sequence where Lois commandeers a LexCorp drone to aid Superman, a nod to her comic book daring. This collaboration with Gunn extended to reshoots, where she suggested toning down Lois's sarcasm and emotional beats to heighten the romance, resulting in a tender slow burn that audiences adored. Post-release, Brosnahan's performance earned her a Golden Globe nod, with critics like those on Rotten Tomatoes calling it the heart of the film, a counterpoint to the ensemble's bombast. Her off-screen rapport with Contatc is sharing Philly cheese-esque runs during breaks mirrored their on-screen chemistry, fostering an intimacy that permeated the film's love story. In interviews, she reflected on the role's weight. "Lois isn't just Superman's love interest, she's his conscience, his challenger." Playing her felt like stepping into a legacy of women who demand better from heroes and the world. Nicholas Holt's transformation into Lex Luthor represented one of the most intriguing pivots in the casting saga. a villainous turn born from an initial bid for the hero himself. Auditioning for Superman in early 2023, the 35-year-old British actor impressed Gunn with his intensity but was ultimately deemed too controlled for the optimistic leader qualities better suited to Luthor's calculating menace. Announced in November 2023, Holt's casting as the bald, genius billionaire mogul drew from his chameleon-like resume, spanning the feral beastliness of X-Men's Hank McCoy to the sly charm of the menu's chef. Gunn envisioned the Luthor who was chillingly rational rather than cartoonish, and Holt delivered, shaving his head on day one and immersing in biographies of tech titans like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs to craft a modern egomaniac obsessed with human supremacy over alien threats. Holt's Luthor isn't a cackling madman like Gene Hackman's in The Reaver or Jesse Eisenberg's twitchy eccentric. He's a cold operator, weaponizing media and to erode public faith in Superman. In this film, his arc unfolds through boardroom monologues laced with philosophical barbs. The truth is a construct. Superman I build reality so that reviewers called the best version we've seen on screen. Utterly despicable. You want to punch him in the face, repeatedly. One Reddit user, initially skeptical, posted post-viewing, Nicholas Holt did an amazing performance. He probably was the best actor here. I was stunned by him. Holt prepared by studying real-world demagogues, incorporating subtle tics like a predatory smile during press conferences, and collaborating with VFX teams for Luthor's grotesque experiments, including a kaiju hybrid that blends organic horror with corporate slickness. The chemistry with Curran's what was electric antagonism. Their first scene, a tense Metropolis confrontation, required 17 takes to perfect Holt's icy stare down. Gunn praised Holt's versatility in a Hollywood Reporter piece, noting how his controlled style allowed Luthor to simmer before erupting, a contrast to Superman's openness. Fan theories pre-release speculated Holt's X-Men ties might foreshadow multiverse crossovers, but the film kept him grounded as DCU's premier foe. Detractors, like a review decrying the villains as cardboard cutouts, missed Holt's nuance, but box office polls showed 85% audience approval for his menace. Offset, Holt bonded with the cast over British humor, hosting pub trivia nights that lightened the tone during grueling night shoots. Edie Gathagai's portrayal of Michael Holt, Mr. Terrific, infused the ensemble with intellectual swagger, a casting choice that highlighted Gunn's commitment to diverse, underrepresented heroes. Announced in October 2023, Gathagai, known for his brooding intensity in The Batman as Dr. Jonathan Crane, brought a fresh take to the Olympic decathlete-turned-vigilante, emphasizing Holt's genius inventor side over brute force. At 45, Gathagai's athletic build honed from college track days fit the role seamlessly, but it was his audition tape, reciting TOMAHAWK tech specs while dismantling a prop gadget, that won Gunn over. Edie makes Mr. Terrific feel like the smartest guy in the room without making anyone else feel small. Gunn tweeted post-casting, "In this film, Mr. Terrific serves as Superman's tech-savvy ally, hacking LexCorp servers and deploying nanite swarms in a standout fight sequence against the Engineer's mercenaries, which one review called one of the most memorable in the film." Gathagai drew from real innovators like Neil deGrasse Tyson for Holt's articulate optimism, adding layers of cultural commentary on black excellence in STEM. His interactions with Superman mentoring Clark on ethical issues added emotional heft, with Gathagai improvising lines about legacy that resonated in test screenings. Fan communities on X praised the inclusive casting, with hashtags like #Mr. Terrific trending after the trailer debuted his sleek blue and black suit. Challenges included VFX integration for his T-spheres, requiring motion capture marathons, but Gathagai's professionalism shone, earning shoutouts from co-stars like Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner. Green Lantern brought Gunn's signature reference to the DCU, a role tailor-made for the Firefly alum's sardonic charm. Cast in January 2024, Fillion was Gunn's first pick, fresh off the Suicide Squad's GD Primate. At 54, he leaned into Gardner's mullet-wearing, hot-headed persona, auditioning with a rink-injured beer that had the room roaring. "Nathan's the lovable asshole we all need," Gunn quipped, envisioning a Lantern who's more bar-brawler than Cosmic Cop. Gardner's arc pokes fun at Lantern lore, with Fillion's character clashing hilariously with Superman over old-school justice, including a ring-fueled pie fight in the Fortress of Solitude. Reviewers loved his laugh-out-loud moments, creative use of his ring, though some criticized the humor as detracting from stakes. Fillion's preparation involved willpower visualization exercises, channeling his castle detective grit into Gardner's bravado. His banter with Hawkgirl sparked fanship theories. An offset, he organized cast karaoke, solidifying his role as the group's morale booster. Isabella Merced's Hawkgirl, Kendra Saunders added fierce aerial combat to the mix, a breakout for the 23-year-old Dora and the Lost City of Gold Star. Announced in October 2023, Merced beat out dozens with the mace-wielding screen test that showcased her gymnast background. Gunn sought a Hawkgirl who embodied reincarnation's tragedy without brooding, and Merced delivered, blending vulnerability with warrior ethos. In this film, Kendra mentors Superman in flight tactics during a Metropolis siege, her nth metal mace clanging against Luthor's drones and visceral choreography. Reviews highlighted her welcome edge, with Merced's Peruvian heritage informing Kendra's cultural motifs. She trained with Cirque du Soleil performers for wingsuit sequences, and her chemistry with Fillion fueled ensemble levity. Post-release, Merced's Hawkgirl inspired cosplay surges, cementing her as a rising DC icon. Anthony Kerrigan's Metamorpho, Rex Mason was a wild card addition, transforming the Veep standout into elemental shapeshifter. Cast in August 2023, Kerrigan's audition morphing from human to mud monster mid-monologue echoed his no-nonsense Victor's sasses in Gotham. Gunn cast him for the tragic everyman vibe, and at 42. Kerrigan's lanky frame suited Rex's clay-like contortions. Metamorpho provides comic relief and pathos, quipping through acid spit attacks while lamenting his cursed form. A review noted him nearly stealing the show, with Kerrigan using motion capture to layer humor over horror. His backstory ties into Luthor's experiments, adding depth, and fan art exploded online. Wendell Pierce's Perry White anchored the Daily Planet with gruff authority, The Wire veteran bringing gravitas at 62. Cast in late 2023, Pierce's cigar-chomping Reed nailed the editor's bark, drawing from his stage work. Jimmy Olsen, played by Skylar Giacinto, added youthful energy, the book-smart actor's eager photographer vibe contrasting Lois's cynicism. Giacinto's pratfalls during chases earned laughs, though some reviews lamented underdeveloped arcs. Prue Leith's Martha Kent offered maternal warmth, the Bake Off host's first major role at 85, her tender scenes with Kyle Ironswood evoking Smallville nostalgia. Sarah Sampaio's Eve Tessmaker slinked as Luthor's seductive aide, her modeling poise adding a lure. Mara Gabriela de Faraz the engineer brought cybernetic menace, the Venezuelan actress's intensity shining in brutal fights. Gunn's overarching vision unified this eclectic ensemble, prioritizing found family dynamics over star power. In a variety feature, he detailed how chemistry reads ensured balance, with supporting heroes like Mr. Terrific and Hawkgirl orbiting Superman without eclipsing him. This approach, informed by Guardian's success, addressed fragmentation, fostering organic crossovers. Challenges like scheduling conflicts a whole juggling Nosferatu were met with reshoots, but the result was a cohesive tapestry. Fan discussions on Reddit dissected pairings, like Gardner Terrific bromance, while critics praised the vibrant ensemble for revitalizing Superman's world. Gunn's inclusive lens at diverse ages, ethnicity as mirrored the character's universal appeal, setting a template for the DCU's future. Through meticulous auditions and collaborative tweaks, the casting not only honored legacy but forged new myths, proving Superman's enduring relevance through human connection. Superman, 2025, film, comprehensive analysis production. The production of Superman, 2025, represents a significant milestone in the evolution of the DC Universe, marking a complete reboot of the Superman film franchise under the guidance of James Gunn and Peter Safran. This ambitious project emerged from the complex restructuring of DC Entertainment following the merger of Discovery, Incorporated and Warner Media to form Warner Bros. Discovery in April 2022. The film's production journey spanned several years of development, encompassing creative challenges, casting decisions, and the establishment of a new cinematic universe. The production was officially handled by DC Studios, with James Gunn and Peter Safran serving as producers through their respective companies, Troll Court Entertainment and the Safran Company. The film's production budget became a subject of considerable discussion, with initial reports suggesting a gross production budget of $363.8 million, which would have positioned it among the most expensive superhero films ever made. However, James Gunn disputed the accuracy of these figures, and subsequent reports indicated a more reasonable net production budget of $225 million after incentives and tax breaks were factored in. The production design was helmed by Beth Mickle, who had previously collaborated with Gunn on The Suicide Squad. Mickle's approach to creating the world of Superman involved establishing a visual language that honored the character's rich comic book heritage while introducing contemporary elements that would resonate with modern audiences. The design philosophy encompassed everything from the iconic Fortress of Solitude to the bustling newsroom of the Daily Planet, each environment carefully crafted to support the film's narrative and emotional beats. Costume design was overseen by Judianna Makovsky, another frequent Gunn collaborator who had worked on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Makovsky's work on the Superman suit became particularly noteworthy, as it needed to honor the character's classic aesthetic while introducing practical considerations for filming and visual effects work. The costume design extended beyond Superman himself to encompass the various supporting characters, including the colorful array of superheroes that populate the film's expanded universe. The film's production utilized state-of-the-art technology throughout its creation. The entire film was shot using IMAX-certified red digital cinema cameras, ensuring maximum visual fidelity for both standard and large-format presentations. This technological approach aligned with Gunn's vision of creating a visually spectacular experience that would showcase Superman's world with unprecedented clarity and detail. Legacy Effects, the renowned practical effects studio, contributed significantly to the production by providing character designs, prosthetic makeup, specialty suits, and animatronics. Their involvement ensured that many of the film's fantastical elements had a tangible, physical presence on set, reducing reliance on digital effects while enhancing the authenticity of performances and interactions between actors and supernatural elements. The production scope extended internationally, with filming taking place across multiple locations to capture the global nature of Superman's story. The international component of the production included the spectacular Norwegian filming, which provided authentic Arctic landscapes for the Fortress of Solitude sequences. This commitment to practical locations over entirely digital environments reflected Gunn's preference for grounding fantastical elements in real-world authenticity. Throughout the production process, the film maintained its commitment to being the foundational entry point for the new DC universe. This responsibility influenced numerous production decisions, from the careful introduction of multiple superheroes to the establishment of visual and tonal consistency. Development on the Man of Steel sequel faced numerous obstacles over the years. Initial plans considered incorporating imprisoned Kryptonians from the first film and the character Brainiac as potential antagonists. By August 2016, the sequel was reportedly a top priority for the studio, with Cavill's manager Danny Garcia confirming active development. Amy Adams, who portrayed Lois Lane in the original film, indicated that the studio was working on the screenplay by November 2016. Matthew Vaughn emerged as Warner Bros.'s top choice to direct, engaging in preliminary conversations about the project by March 2017. However, the troubled production of Justice League, 2017, significantly impacted Warner Bros.' approach to DC projects. By the end of 2017, a Man of Steel sequel was no longer coming anytime soon, if at all, according to industry reports. This uncertainty continued into 2018, when Christopher McQuarrie and Henry Cavill pitched their own vision for a new Superman film, partially inspired by the animated film Up, 2009. But Warner Brothers did not pursue the concept. The development took a significant turn when Warner Brothers approached James Gunn in 2018 to write and direct a Superman film. However, Gunn was uncertain about taking on the character, lacking a clear vision for Superman, especially since the character was so well known compared to the relatively obscure Guardians of the Galaxy that he had successfully adapted for Marvel Studios. Gunn chose to make the Suicide Squad 2021, instead, calling it the easier path. The trajectory of Superman development changed dramatically with the merger of Discovery, Incorporated and Warner Media in April 2022, creating Warner Brothers. Discovery under the leadership of David Zaslav. The new company recognized that DC lacked a coherent creative and brand strategy and was underusing Superman. Around late August 2022, Gunn was hired to work on a new Superman film that would be standalone from the DCU, not the sequel to Man of Steel. The development process accelerated when Gunn and Peter Safran were announced as co-chairs and co-CEOs of the newly formed DC Studios at the end of October 2022. Within a week of starting their new roles, they had begun developing an 8 to 10-year plan for a new DC universe that would serve as a soft reboot of the DCU. This ambitious vision positioned Superman as a central figure in the new continuity. In December 2022, Gunn publicly announced that he was writing a new Superman film focused on a younger version of the character, which would not star Henry Cavill and would not retell Superman's origin story. Instead, the film would focus on Superman as a young reporter interacting with key characters such as Lois Lane. On January 31, 2023, Gunn and Safran unveiled their DCU slate, officially titling the film Superman: Legacy and setting a release date of July 11, 2025, which coincides with the birthday of Gunn's late father. The development process drew inspiration from multiple comic book sources, most notably All-Star Superman, 2005 to 2008, by Grant Morrison and Frank Whiteley. Additional influences included the Superman animated shorts, 1941 to 1943, Superman, the animated series, 1996 to 2000, Superman, Birthright, 2003-04, the Brainiac story arc, 2008, Superman, Ending Battle, 2002, Superman for All Seasons, 1998, Kingdom Come, 1996, Morrison's Action Comics run, and Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, 1986. Gunn also cited the kaiju film Godzilla-1, 2023, as an inspiration for its humanity and monster depiction. Pre-production officially began in April 2023, with production design, costume design, and casting commencing simultaneously. The development team worked to establish a tone that would differ from Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy films while maintaining his distinctive directorial voice. Gunn completed the first draft of the script at the end of April 2023, and production was expected to remain unaffected by the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike. The casting process became a crucial element of pre-production, with Gunn seeking an actor who possessed Superman's humanity, kindness, and compassion as somebody who you want to give a hug. Audition tapes for the main roles of Superman, Lois Lane, and Lex Luthor were submitted by early May 2023, with Gunn beginning to review them while simultaneously storyboarding the film. A significant development decision involved the inclusion of other superheroes in the film, which Gunn justified as necessary to explore Clark Kent's interactions with his colleagues and Superman's interactions with other superheroes. This approach was designed to show how these relationships impact the characters' values and choices, establishing the interconnected nature of the new DC universe from the outset. The development process also included extensive consultation with DC Comics writers, including Tom King, particularly regarding the suspension of disbelief surrounding Clark Kent's dual identity. Gunn incorporated the concept of hypnotic glasses that subtly distort Clark's appearance, a detail from the comic book canon that had kind of been forgotten. Throughout development, The project maintained its commitment to serving as the foundational entry point for the new DC universe while telling a complete, standalone story about Superman. This balance between universe building and character-focused storytelling became a defining characteristic of the development process, influencing everything from script structure to casting decisions. The development team worked closely with Warner Bros. Discovery executives throughout the process, ensuring that the creative vision aligned with the studio's strategic goals for the DC brand. This collaboration included regular consultations with David Zaslav, who spent considerable time with Gunn during the script writing process. By the end of the development phase, the project had evolved from Superman Legacy to simply Superman, with Gunn explaining that he had come to feel the film was about looking forward rather than backward, making the Legacy subtitle inappropriate for the story's forward-looking themes. Filming principal photography for Superman commenced on February 29, 2024, symbolically chosen as Superman's birthday in the comic books. The filming process represented a massive logistical undertaking that spanned multiple countries and states, utilizing diverse locations to capture the global scope of Superman's story. The production operated under the working title Genesis and was scheduled to last approximately 4 months. The filming journey began in the remote and spectacular landscape of Svalbard, Norway, where the production spent 1 week shooting scenes for Superman's Fortress of Solitude. James Gunn specifically chose the Adventuland Valley in Svalbard for its natural beauty, dramatic landscapes, and visual similarities to Antarctica, where the Fortress of Solitude is traditionally located in the comics. This location provided authentic Arctic environments that would serve as the backdrop for some of the film's most emotionally significant scenes, including Superman's recovery and his interactions with the Kryptonian heritage stored within his sanctuary. The Norwegian filming presented unique challenges due to the extreme weather conditions and remote location. The production team had to transport extensive equipment and crew to one of the world's most isolated filming locations, requiring careful coordination with local authorities and environmental considerations. The week-long shoot in Norway captured not only exterior shots of the fortress but also provided atmospheric elements that would be integrated into the film's visual effects work. Following the Norwegian location work, production moved to its primary base at Trilith Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, where the majority of the film was shot. Trilith Studios, formerly known as Pinewood Atlanta Studios, has become a major filmmaking hub, offering state-of-the-art facilities that could accommodate the large-scale production requirements of a major superhero film. The studio work began by March 8, 2024, and was expected to continue until August 2. Henry Breham served as cinematographer, returning from his work on the latter Guardians of the Galaxy films, The Suicide Squad, and The Flash. Breham's experience with superhero filmmaking and his established working relationship with Gunn proved invaluable in capturing the film's blend of intimate character moments and spectacular action sequences. The entire film was shot using IMAX-certified red digital cinema cameras, ensuring maximum visual quality for both standard theatrical presentations and large-format IMAX screenings. The Atlanta filming encompassed a wide range of sets and scenarios, from the intimate newsroom of the Daily Planet to the spectacular action sequences featuring Superman and other heroes. The studio environment allowed for precise control over lighting, weather conditions, and complex practical effects work. Legacy Effects contributed significantly to the Atlanta filming with their practical effects, prosthetic makeup, specialty suits, and animatronics, providing tangible elements that actors could interact with rather than relying entirely on digital effects. One of the most significant filming segments took place in Ohio, where the production received over $11 million through the state's tax credit program based on a $37 million spend in the state. Pre-production work in Ohio began in early February 2024, with filming locations including Cleveland and Cincinnati. The Ohio filming was scheduled to take 37 days between April 1 and August 23, 2024. Cleveland served as a major filming hub, with 6 weeks of location work throughout the city. The production began downtown filming on June 24, 2024, utilizing numerous iconic Cleveland locations. Ontario Street, the Cleveland Greyhound Station, Public Square, the Detroit Superior Bridge, PNC Plaza, Progressive Field, and the Cleveland Arcade all served as filming locations, with each site carefully selected to represent different aspects of Metropolis and the broader world of the film. The exterior of the historic Leader Building was transformed to serve as the headquarters of the Daily Planet, requiring extensive set decoration and digital enhancement work. Key Tower was utilized as the headquarters for Stag Enterprises, while exterior shots of the Huntington Bank Building, Key Tower, and the Soldiers and Sailors Monument were captured in Public Square. The production's use of Cleveland's distinctive architecture helped establish the visual identity of Metropolis while providing authentic urban environments for the film's action sequences. Filming in Cleveland concluded on July 16, 2024, when Gunn indicated there were only a couple of weeks left in the overall shooting schedule. The production then moved to Cincinnati by July 18, where filming took place at the Cincinnati Museum Center in Union Terminal and in the Lytle Tunnel. These locations provided unique architectural and underground environments that served specific narrative purposes in the film. Additional location work took place at the Headlands Beach State Park in Mentor, Ohio, beginning on June 14, 2024. This natural location provided coastal and beach environments that contrasted with the urban settings of Cleveland and Cincinnati, adding geographical diversity to the film's visual palette. The filming process also included work in Macon, Georgia, expanding the production's geographical scope within the southeastern United States. These additional locations provided rural and small-town environments that were essential for depicting Clark Kent's Kansas origins and his connection to American heartland values. Throughout the filming process, the production maintained rigorous safety protocols and environmental considerations. The international and multi-state nature of the filming required careful coordination with various regulatory bodies and local film commissions. The production team worked closely with local communities to minimize disruption while maximizing the authentic character that each location brought to the film. The dog actor Jolene served as a stand-in for Krypto, Superman's superpowered canine companion. Though the character was primarily created through visual effects work, Krypto's portrayal was modeled after Gunn's own dog, Osu, adding a personal touch to the character's development and behavior. Filming officially wrapped on July 30, 2024, marking the completion of principal photography. The wrap represented a significant milestone in the production process, transitioning the project into post-production while the cast and crew celebrated the completion of an ambitious and complex filming schedule that had taken them from the Arctic wilderness of Norway to the urban landscapes of the American Midwest. Post-production. The post-production phase of Superman represented a massive undertaking that transformed months of footage into the polished, effects-heavy spectacle that audiences ultimately experienced. The process began immediately following the completion of principal photography in July 2024 and continued through June 2025, encompassing extensive visual effects work, sound design, musical scoring, and editorial refinement. Editorial responsibilities were handled by the team of William Hoy and Craig Alpert, both experienced in the superhero genre. Hoy had previously worked on The Batman, while Alpert contributed to Blue Beetle, 2023. Their collaboration brought complementary editorial perspectives to the project, with Hoy's experience in grounded, realistic superhero storytelling balancing Alpert's work on more fantastical comic book adaptations. The editorial process involved assembling hundreds of hours of footage into a coherent narrative that balanced multiple storylines, character arcs, and spectacular action sequences. The visual effects work represented perhaps the most complex aspect of post-production, requiring coordination between multiple world-class facilities. Framestore, Industrial Light Magic, ILM, and Wattier Diaresis FX served as the primary visual effects vendors, each contributing their specialized expertise to different aspects of the film. Visual effects supervisor Street 8 copyright Fane Seretti returned from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 to oversee the overall visual effects strategy and maintain consistency across the various vendors. Much of the visual effects team from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 reunited for Superman, bringing their established working relationships and understanding of Gunn's visual style to the new project. This continuity proved invaluable in achieving the director's vision for Superman's flying sequences, heat vision effects, super strength demonstrations, and the various other superpowered abilities featured throughout the film. The creation of Krypto presented unique challenges, as the character needed to appear as both an adorable companion and a powerful super being. While Jolene the dog provided on-set reference and interaction for the actors, the majority of Krypto's superpowered moments were created through digital animation. The visual effects team worked to maintain the character's personality and charm while incorporating spectacular flying sequences and displays of strength that matched Superman's own abilities. Framestore handled many of the film's most complex sequences, including the creation of digital environments for the Fortress of Solitude interiors and the various Pocket Universe sequences. Their work extended beyond pure digital creation to encompass the seamless integration of practical elements shot on location in Norway with fantastical interior spaces that could only be realized through visual effects. Industrial Light Magic contributed their legendary expertise in spacecraft and technology visualization, creating the various Superman robots that assist the hero at his Fortress of Solitude. ILM's work on these mechanical characters required careful attention to both their functional appearance and their emotional expressiveness, as they serve important narrative roles in Superman's journey of self-discovery. Wattier Diaris's FX focused on many of the film's large-scale action sequences, including the Kaiju attack on Metropolis and the climactic battles between Superman, Ultraman, and the various other powered characters. Their expertise in creature animation and large-scale destruction sequences proved essential in realizing some of the film's most spectacular moments. The post-production process included extensive test screening sessions beginning in December 2024. These screenings allowed Gunn and the editorial team to gauge audience reactions and make refinements to pacing, character development, and action sequences. The test screening feedback influenced various aspects of the final edit, ensuring that the film would resonate with both Superman fans and general audiences. Additional photography sessions, commonly known as pickup shots, took place in Los Angeles and Atlanta during the post-production period. A day and a half of individual pickup shots were scheduled in Los Angeles in December 2024. Which Gunn described as work to enhance the film rather than reshoot any scenes. 3 days of additional pickups also took place in Atlanta by the end of May 2025, addressing specific technical and narrative needs identified during the post-production process. The film achieved picture lock on June 5, 2025. Marking the completion of all editorial changes and the finalization of the film's structure and content. This milestone allowed the sound and music teams to complete their work based on the locked picture, ensuring perfect synchronization between all audio elements and the visual content. Color grading and digital intermediate work ensured visual consistency across all the various filming locations and visual effects elements. The color palette needed to support the film's optimistic tone while maintaining realism in the dramatic moments and spectacle during the action sequences. The grading process also ensured that the IMAX version would take full advantage of the format's enhanced brightness and color range. Sound design and mixing created the audio landscape necessary to support Superman's world, from the subtle whoosh of his cape to the thunderous impact of his landings. The sound team worked closely with the visual effects departments to ensure that every powered ability had appropriate audio support, creating an immersive experience that would translate effectively across various theatrical sound systems. The post-production process also included extensive quality control measures to ensure technical excellence across all aspects of the final film. Color correction, audio levels, visual effects integration, and overall technical specifications were rigorously tested and refined to meet theatrical standards for both standard and premium format presentations. Throughout post-production, James Gunn remained heavily involved in every aspect of the process, from editorial decisions to visual effects approval to sound mixing sessions. His hands-on approach ensured that the final film remained true to his creative vision while meeting the technical standards expected of a major studio release. The completion of post-production represented the culmination of nearly 3 years of work, From initial script development through the final technical delivery, the process transformed raw footage and concepts into the polished spectacle that would introduce audiences to the new DC universe while telling a complete and satisfying Superman story. Music. The musical landscape of Superman, 2025, represents a fascinating balance between honoring the iconic musical legacy of the character and establishing a new sonic identity for the DC universe. The scoring process brought together composers John Murphy and David Fleming to create a soundtrack that would both pay homage to John Williams' legendary Superman theme while establishing its own distinctive voice for the modern iteration of the Man of Steel. John Murphy, known for his work on films such as 28 Days Later and Kick-Ass, brought his experience in both intimate character work and large-scale action scoring to the project. His collaboration with David Fleming, an Emmy-winning composer who had worked on HBO's The Last of Us Season 2 and various other television and film projects, created a musical partnership that could address both the epic scope of Superman's adventures and a personal, emotional journey at the film's heart. The most significant decision in the musical development was the choice to incorporate and reinterpret John Williams' iconic Superman theme from Richard Donner's 1978 film. James Gunn considered Williams' score to be one of the greatest film scores of all time and had associated the theme with Superman from the very beginning of the film's development. Rather than simply using the original recordings or creating an entirely new theme, Murphy and Fleming chose to create what Murphy described as an electrified version of Williams' music. This approach required careful consideration of how to honor the original while making it relevant to contemporary audiences and the new film's specific tone. Murphy's electrified interpretation maintained the heroic, soaring quality of Williams' composition while incorporating modern production techniques and instrumentation that would complement the film's updated visual style and James Gunn's directorial approach. The collaboration between Murphy and Fleming allowed for a multifaceted approach to the score. Murphy's background in genre filmmaking and electronic music production complemented Fleming's more traditional orchestral and television scoring experience. Fleming's Emmy recognition for his television work brought a level of dramatic sophistication that was essential for the quieter, more intimate moments between Clark Kent and Lois Lane, as well as the emotional beats involving Superman's relationship with his adoptive and biological parents. The soundtrack, released by Water Tower Music on July 4, 2025, presented 33 tracks with a total duration of 1 hour and 9 minutes. This substantial musical content provided a comprehensive journey through the emotional and heroic landscapes of the new Superman narrative. The track listing included both intimate character themes and spectacular action pieces, reflecting the film's balance between personal storytelling and superhero spectacle. Water Tower Music also released Murphy's music for the film's trailer as a standalone single titled Theme from Superman trailer version, allowing fans to experience the composer's reinterpretation of the iconic theme before the film's release. This strategy helped build anticipation while showcasing the musical approach that would define the new Superman's sonic identity. The scoring process required careful attention to the film's various locations and moods. The Fortress of Solitude sequences demanded music that could convey both the wonder of Kryptonian technology and the loneliness of Superman's alien heritage. The Daily Planet newsroom scenes needed musical support that could enhance the rapid-fire dialogue and workplace comedy while maintaining the underlying romantic tension between Clark and Lois. The action sequences presented particular challenges, as the music needed to support not only Superman's individual heroics but also his interactions with other superheroes including Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, and Metamorpho. Each character required musical identity while maintaining cohesion with the overall Superman theme and the broader DC Universe aesthetic that would extend to future films. Murphy and Fleming's approach to Lex Luthor's music created a sinister counterpoint to Superman's heroic themes. The villain's music needed to reflect his intelligence and technological capabilities while conveying the obsessive hatred that drives his opposition to Superman. The composers created themes that could underscore both Luthor's public persona as a respected businessman and his private identity as Superman's greatest enemy. The kaiju attack sequence required music that could support large-scale destruction while maintaining the film's optimistic tone. The composers drew inspiration from both classic monster movie scores and contemporary superhero action music to create the soundscape that was exciting rather than terrifying, supporting the film's approach to spectacular action as heroic rather than nihilistic. Krypto's musical theme presented unique challenges, as the character needed music that conveyed both his adorable pet qualities and his formidable superpowers. The composers created playful themes that could shift seamlessly between comedy and action, supporting the character's role as both emotional support for Superman and powerful ally in battle. The romantic themes for Clark Kent and Lois Lane drew inspiration from classic Hollywood romance while incorporating contemporary sensibilities. The music needed to support both the professional dynamic between the two reporters and their personal relationship, creating themes that could evolve throughout the film as their connection deepened. Critical reception of the soundtrack proved mixed, with some reviewers praising the respectful incorporation of Williams' themes while others felt that the approach relied too heavily on trailerized versions of the classic music. However, the musical choices clearly serve the film's overall vision of honoring Superman's legacy while establishing a new direction for the character. The soundtrack's commercial performance reflected strong fan interest in both the nostalgic elements and the new musical directions. The availability across multiple platforms including Apple Music and Spotify allowed widespread access to the music, contributing to the film's overall cultural impact. The success of the musical approach established important precedents for future DC Universe projects, demonstrating how classic themes could be reinterpreted and integrated into new stories while maintaining their iconic power and emotional resonance. The release strategy for Superman 2025 represented a comprehensive approach to launching not just a single film, but the entire DC Universe franchise. The campaign combined traditional theatrical release patterns with innovative marketing approaches designed to rebuild audience confidence in DC properties while establishing James Gunn's vision for the character and the broader universe. The theatrical release of Superman followed a carefully orchestrated schedule designed to maximize both domestic and international box office potential. The film premiered at the TCL Chinese Theater on July 7, 2025, providing a prestigious Hollywood launch that honored the film's significance as both the Superman reboot and the beginning of the new DC Universe. This premiere date was strategically chosen to build momentum leading into the wide release. Warner Bros. Pictures released the film theatrically in the United States on July 11, 2025. A date that held personal significance for James Gunn as it coincided with his late father's birthday. This emotional connection added depth to the release date selection while positioning the film in the lucrative summer movie season. The July release date also provided optimal spacing from other major releases, giving Superman maximum theatrical exposure during the peak movie-going season. The international release strategy rolled out the film across global markets in coordination with the domestic launch, ensuring that worldwide audiences could experience the film simultaneously and preventing piracy concerns that often arise from staggered international releases. Major markets including the United Kingdom, Australia, Germany, France, and Japan received the film within days of the U.S. release, maximizing the global marketing campaign's effectiveness. The theatrical presentation utilized multiple formats to enhance the viewing experience. The film's IMAX certification allowed for premium large-format presentations that showcased the spectacular action sequences and sweeping landscapes captured during filming in Norway and various U.S. locations. IMAX theaters provided enhanced audio and visual quality that particularly benefited the flying sequences and the various superpowered encounters throughout the film. Standard theatrical presentations maintained high technical quality across all venue types, from large multiplex theaters to smaller community cinemas. The film's technical specifications ensured consistent presentation quality regardless of theater size or equipment, making the Superman experience accessible to the widest possible audience. The theatrical marketing campaign included extensive promotional partnerships and tie-ins designed to maintain visibility throughout the release period. Warner Brothers coordinated with various corporate partners to create promotional campaigns that extended the film's reach beyond traditional movie marketing. These partnerships included fast food chains, toy manufacturers, clothing companies, and technology firms, each contributing to the overall promotional ecosystem. Special theatrical events included advanced screenings for fan communities, military personnel, and charitable organizations. These special screenings helped build word-of-mouth recommendation while honoring Superman's traditional association with American values and heroic idealism. The film's themes of hope and heroism made it particularly suitable for community screenings and special events. The theatrical run extended well beyond the standard blockbuster release window, with the film maintaining presence in theaters through late fall 2025. This extended theatrical presence reflected both strong audience demand and Warner Brothers' confidence in the film's ability to maintain box office momentum over time. International theatrical distribution required careful attention to cultural sensitivities and local market preferences. The film's universal themes of heroism, love, and sacrifice translated effectively across different cultures, while the spectacular action sequences provided visual excitement that transcended language barriers. Subtitling and dubbing work ensured that non-English-speaking audiences could fully engage with the character development and dialogue-driven scenes. Premium format presentations extended beyond IMAX to include Dolby Atmos audio experiences, 4DX motion seats, and ScreenX multi-screen presentations in select markets. These enhanced formats provided additional revenue streams while offering audiences unique ways to experience Superman's world. The theatrical release also included special anniversary screenings and retrospective presentations that honored the character's long cinematic history. These events helped position the new film within the broader Superman legacy while celebrating the enduring appeal of the character across multiple generations. Drive-in theater presentations provided a nostalgic viewing experience that connected with Superman's mid-20th century origins while offering family-friendly entertainment options. These presentations proved particularly popular during summer months, contributing to the film's overall theatrical gross while providing unique marketing opportunities. The theatrical release concluded with a gradual transition to digital and physical media formats, ensuring that the film remained accessible to audiences while maximizing revenue across all distribution windows. The success of the theatrical release established a strong foundation for the film's continued commercial performance across subsequent distribution platforms. Home media. The home media release strategy for Superman 2025 extended the film's commercial life while providing fans with enhanced viewing experiences and extensive bonus content. The multi-format approach ensured accessibility across various consumer preferences and technology platforms, from traditional physical media to cutting-edge streaming options. The digital release preceded physical media by several weeks, with the film becoming available for purchase and rental on major platforms including Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, Google Play, Vudu, and Microsoft Movies TV on October 15, 2025. This digital-first strategy capitalized on the film's theatrical momentum while providing immediate access for eager fans who wanted to revisit the film or share it with friends and family who had missed the theatrical experience. Digital pricing strategies included multiple tiers, with rental options available for $5.99 for standard definition and $6.99 for high definition, while purchase prices ranged from $14.99 for HD to $19.99 for 4K Ultra HD with HDR support. These pricing structures reflected industry standards while remaining accessible to a broad consumer base. The 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray release arrived on November 12, 2025. Providing the highest quality home viewing experience possible. The 4K presentations showcased the film's spectacular visual effects and Henry Brahm's cinematography with unprecedented detail and color accuracy. HDR support enhanced the contrast and brightness range, particularly benefiting the scenes in the Arctic Fortress of Solitude and the various flying sequences throughout the film. Standard Blu-ray and DVD releases accompanied the 4K edition, ensuring compatibility with various home entertainment systems. The multi-format release strategy recognized that not all consumers had upgraded to 4K capability while providing options for every budget and technical setup. Extensive bonus features accompanied all home media versions, though the 4K and Blu-ray editions provided the most comprehensive supplementary content. A feature-length audio commentary by James Gunn offered insights into his creative decisions, the challenges of launching a new DC universe, and his approach to updating the Superman character for contemporary audiences. The making of Superman, Building a New Universe served as the primary making-of documentary, running 45 minutes and covering the entire production process from script development through post-production. This documentary included interviews with key cast and crew members, behind-the-scenes footage from various filming locations, and detailed looks at the costume and production design processes. Flying Again, the visual effects of Superman provided a 30-minute deep dive into the extensive visual effects work that brought the film's spectacular elements to life. The featurette included before and after comparisons, interviews with visual effects supervisors, and detailed breakdowns of key sequences including the Kaiju attack and Superman's various displays of power. Crypto, From Page to Screen offered a charming 15-minute look at the process. James Gunn's Superman had a lot riding against it. The reboot follows a decade of messy attempts to build a popular DC universe. An unforgiving fanbase of Zack Snyder loyalists accompanied the sinking ship. Superman's last two reboots had lukewarm commercial success. The greatest achievement of those movies was arguably the casting of Henry Cavill. After seeing the new entry, it became clear why Gunn was the correct choice to revitalize the DC universe. With Guardians of the Galaxy, Gunn demonstrated how to introduce a galactic world of characters without any of them feeling shoehorned into the plot. He already knows how to juggle various personalities in a sandbox of his own, and within the first 30 minutes, we see his experience masterfully canvas a new DC playground. What's Superman 2025 about? Similar to Guardians of the Galaxy, the new incarnation of Superman throws us into an already existing universe. Our first encounter with Superman, Clark Kent, David Corenswet, centers around the footage shown from the extended trailer. Superman has a reputation as Earth's protector. After serving the planet for a few years, he loses his first battle to an enemy known as the Hammer of Ba-Aravia. Similar to the extended trailer, we receive our first glimpses of the adorably infectious Crypto, and we learn this version of Superman can sustain injuries before healing from the sun's power. After his bodily repair, thanks to the automatons, caretaking Kryptonian robots, the film takes us to Metropolis, where it briefly shows Clark Kent's life. If there's any nitpick about the film, it might be the limited time we spend with him as the reporter. Clark Kent's introduction at the Daily Planet highlights the chemistry between Corenswet and Rachel Brosnahan. Outside of work, we discover their connection is deeper. Kent boasts about his frequent exclusive interviews with Superman, and Lois ribs Kent about his suspicious access. The script hilariously introduces Jimmy Olsen, Skylar Jacinto, as the reluctant heartthrob. The girls are always swooning for him, but Olsen seems burdened by his mysterious power to make women fall in love with him. However, it's in this introduction that the film sets up the stakes involving Lex Luthor, Nicholas Hoult. It will also be the part of the film that a particular political demographic finds upsetting. In Gunn's screenplay, Luthor's character draws heavy inspiration from present-day leaders who strive to portray outsiders as dangerous. When Superman saves lives in a foreign country, Luthor smears his good intentions by calling it the dangerous use of power. Lex Luthor is the master at smothering Superman in endless political misinformation. But Luthor seeks something truly damaging on the Man of Steel, and when he discovers it, Superman must convince the world that he is the man he claims to be. The optimistic protector returns. The biggest improvement with Superman 2025 is the renewed sense of optimism for the brand. With Gunn's vision, Superman comes across as innocent, like a child who believes they can one day become president. As mentioned earlier, one of the conflicts in the film revolves around whether Superman overstepped on foreign soil to protect lives. It's an intense debate between Clark and another character in the movie. However, Clark, as Superman, defensively states that if he did nothing, innocent people would die. This response serves as a core message for Gunn's Superman, showing that unnecessary politics have no place in matters of empathy and human life. While Man of Steel benefited from a charismatic performance by Henry Cavill, some of the imagery in later sequels, such as Batman v Superman, depicted the character as a fearsome god. For some, the foreboding, godlike approach worked. But for myself, the gentle savior is the correct approach for Superman, and it is wonderfully on display in this reboot. There is a quality about a Superman who gets beaten up by his dog and saves tiny creatures that feels endearing. The CGI is like Marvel, and sometimes worse. Superman offers some of the best comic book action from a DC movie in quite a while. This sense of spectacle is especially on display in the grand finale when Superman truly gets to display his powers. However, the movie unfortunately takes the spectacle found in most Marvel flicks, along with some of the worst uses of messy CGI action from those movies. There are moments in James Gunn's Superman when it almost feels like an Avengers movie preparing to blast a laser beam in the sky. And between the wildly CGI action and a grand-scale threat that narrowly becomes too much, the choice almost feels like Gunn deliberately trying to make it feel like a Marvel event. Additionally, there is a small sequence in the middle of the film involving a prison where the visuals almost mirror the Minecraft movie. It's a mercifully quick sequence, and it's not enough to tank the movie. Still, for a big-budget film, it seems like some of the rendering was incomplete. Superman has a big heart for its characters for years. It's been a myth that a superhero film cannot have a surplus of characters. James Gunn illustrated the falsity with the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise, and he continues to demonstrate that with Superman. With this film, Gunn proves that a crowded superhero movie is acceptable if the characters are essential for the narrative. For example, Gunn introduces Guy Gardner, Nathan Fillion, Mr. Terrific, Edie Gathaway, and Hawkgirl, Isabella Merced, as other metahumans in the film. The trio referred to as the Justice Gang serves as a contrast to Superman's heroic approach, and they also exhibit a humorous sibling rivalry dynamic. Edie Gathaway as Mr. Terrific is the show-stealer of the movie, portraying his role with immense charisma. His character also has one of the best action scenes in the film. The only roles that feel short-changed are Ma and Pa Kent. There is one emotional scene involving Pa and Clark, but for the most part, the Kents get little screen time. But the real beating heart of Superman is between Lois and Clark. Almost every scene they share is magnetic. Hemsworth and Brosnahan deliver the dialogue with sharpness and wit. Their romantic conversational warfare is some of the best scenes in the whole film. For instance, the scene where Lois interviews Clark in the trailer is surprisingly riveting. If the movie were only them having interaction for 2 hours, it would be a 5-star experience. Final thoughts on Superman, 2025. Overall, Superman is a win for the DC Universe. Moviegoers will have complaints with the Marvel levels of CGI, but James Gunn has crafted a splashy, colorful superhero film with tremendous characters. He was truly the right man for the job. Are you excited to see Superman on the big screen soon? Let us know what you think of it on social media at MyCosmicCircus or join our Patreon and private Discord to discuss. One of my favorite scenes in Director James Gunn's energetic but scattershot Superman is also one of the simplest. Rachel Brosnahan's Lois Lane comes home to her apartment and finds David Corenswit's Clark Kent cooking her breakfast for dinner as a surprise to celebrate their 3-month anniversary. Clark says that's her favorite. Lois says no, that's your favorite. They're in that awkward and halting but sweet startup period in a relationship, where one of them is ahead of the other in terms of making a commitment, and they're still getting to know each other. Oh, and then there's the fact that Clark is Superman, and Clark Kent, the Daily Planet journalist, keeps getting exclusive, puff-piece chats with Superman, but Clark agrees to give Lois an on-the-record interview with Superman. The result is a crisply written, well-acted exchange that plays like a modern screwball comedy with serious undertones, as Lois asks Superman fair but tough questions about the ethics of his decision to end the looming war in a foreign land without the approval of the United States government. Good stuff. There are a number of well-executed, dialogue-driven scenes sprinkled among the CGI mayhem and the existential wailing and the chuckle-inducing cameos, and writer-director Gunn admirably leans into the narrative of Superman as the embodiment of the classic American immigrant story. But this first entry in the new DC universe left me with the cinematic fast food vibe. You enjoy the flavors well enough, but you're left feeling as if you've consumed a familiar, empty-calorie, relatively happy meal. Despite the earnest and effective performances by Earnswood and Brosnahan, and a bounty of colorful turns by the talented supporting cast, the beastly elements of the Gods and Monsters universe come across as leftovers from Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy films, and the battle sequences feel like quick-cut, derivative replicas of fight scenes from dozens of other superhero movies. We're left with a mid-level take on Superman that, at times, will remind you of the 1978 version, but doesn't quite match it for pure pop entertainment value. To writer-director Gunn's credit, Superman doesn't waste time with the origin story we all know, opting to plunge us into a world where our titular superhero is recognized as the most powerful and beloved metahuman on Earth. However, his popularity is in jeopardy after the aforementioned mission, in which he took it upon himself to prevent a war. After losing a battle for the first time, Superman is saved by Krypto the Superdog, who isn't exactly Fortress of Solitude trained and could really use some superhero canine behavioral classes. You know that we're not supposed to take a Superman movie too seriously when the pup enters the equation. Nicholas Hoult gives a cracking good performance as a kind of GQ meets Elon Musk take on Lex Luthor, who oversees an army of technicians at Luthor Corp headquarters, making billions off his defense contracts while obsessing over destroying Superman, as his idiot influencer girlfriend Eve Tessmaker, a very funny Sarah Sampaio, takes selfies in the background. We spend only a few minutes here and there at the planet, with an underused Wendell Pierce as Perry White, while scholar Jaisato scores some laughs and puts a fresh spin on the young photojournalist Jimmy Olsen, as Luthor manipulates events in a way that has the public turning on Superman. Only Batman has seen the public turn against him more often than Superman through various movies over the decades. The already crowded field of supporting players expands to include Michael Holt, Mr. Terrific, Edie Gathaway, Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, Nathan Fillion, sporting that comic book accurate but polarizing bowl cut, and Kendra Saunders, Hawkgirl, Isabella Merced, among others. They're an entertaining trio with some impressive skill sets. Still, the ongoing debate about whether they're calling themselves the Justice Gang and the constant bantering and quipping are well-trod superhero movie territory. When Superman is detained and roughed up by masked agents who slam his face into the pavement before locking him up in a detention center alongside hundreds of other prisoners, including a separated family and a woman whose offense was writing a negative blog about Luthor, the modern-day, real-world parallels are striking and legitimate social commentary. On the lighter side, it's a kick to see a Superman who is so noble, so committed to doing the right thing, that he wonders if an enormous and destructive monster could have been subdued but not killed, perhaps to be released elsewhere. He actually takes the time to rescue a squirrel in the heat of a battle. Kudos to the filmmakers for casting Pruitt Taylor Vincent Neva Howell as Ma and Pa Kent, as opposed to the glam casting of Kevin Costner and Diane Lane in the roles in Man of Steel. The moments Clark shares with the only parents he's ever known are touching and authentic. As for Earnswood, he makes for a charming Superman, but he can't quite match the movie star power of Christopher Reeve, nor does he have the unsettling, laser-focused ferocity of Henry Cavill. We've had nearly a dozen versions of Superman on screens big and small through the decades, and for that matter, about the same number of Lex Luthors. This latest version makes for enjoyable enough popcorn entertainment, but ultimately leaves us wondering, was it even necessary? For a movie that's meant to represent the birth of a brand new cinematic universe, the DCU, James Gunn's slight and slap-happy take on Superman doesn't feel much like the start of anything. In part, that's because this goofy twist on the Man of Steel has the good sense to eschew an origin story. Rather than retell how the last son of Krypton was evacuated from another galaxy as a newborn and raised by a pair of kindly farmers in Kansas, Gunn's gospel begins 3 years after Clark Kent, a golly gosh darn wonderful David Earnswood, revealed his alter ego to the masses, 3 weeks since Metropolis resident Metahuman inserted himself into an international conflict, and 3 minutes since he got his ass kicked for the first time. But, like so much of Gunn's semi-charming overcorrection to the biblical seriousness of the Zack Snyder era, that decision to kick things off in medias res feels less motivated by our familiarity with the world's most famous hero than by our detachment from all that he represents. We know his story, Gunn implies, but we've forgotten what it means. This Superman isn't about starting over, it's about retracing our footsteps to find a new path forward. As desperate to make up for lost time as it is to define itself against its times, Gunn's film races to reframe its namesake as a character whose godlike power runs a distant second to his very human vulnerability, and whose unwavering goodness often seems like the most alien thing about his presence on planet Earth. This slightly less swole Kal-El can still carry a skyscraper on his back and get brought to his knees by a hunk of exposed kryptonite, but his lack of cynicism is both his greatest strength and his greatest weakness alike, and the purity of his convictions is deeply foreign to a world so malformed by ulterior motives. Gunn's Superman is less Man of Steel than Paddington 2, minus the tight plotting and the electric action sequences. It's a world that Gunn trusts will recognize despite the Saturday morning blitheness of its tone and the cheery now-Earsville of its design. Metropolis is mostly played by a Cleveland shot to resemble a combination of Mayfield and Manhattan. This may be the zaniest superhero movie its director has made so far. Jonathan and Martha Kent are more cartoonish than the humanoid land shark who helped save the world in the Suicide Squad, but it's also the most rooted in reality. And the constant tension between those two energies is often the only thing that keeps Gunn's script from feeling like 5 different issues of All-Star Superman mixed together. On the one hand, Superman is an undocumented immigrant who becomes a scapegoat for all America's problems, and his nemesis played by Nicholas Hoult, who transforms a dull villain role with a touch of the blinkered sociopathy he perfected on The Great A, is a billionaire technocrat who doesn't trust that anyone so powerful could ever be pure at heart, and publicly accuses Superman of grooming us. On the other hand, Lex Luthor creates an intradimensional pocket universe to gall his ex-girlfriends and manipulates public opinion with an army of enslaved monkeys who blast anti-Superman propaganda onto social media. It should be funny how brainless the masses are in this movie, but Gunn's irreverent streak runs dry whenever his Superman threatens to brush up against satire. One of the film's interlaced but awkwardly layered plots finds a trio of corporate metahumans, the Justice Gang, fighting to contain an adorable baby kaiju as it stomps around Metropolis. Another of them hinges on a lopsided conflict between a cosmopolitan empire and its Middle Eastern neighbor, the former supplied with cutting-edge technology by interested parties, while the latter is in danger of being wiped off the map. That would be a tricky balancing act for any blockbuster. But it's that much harder to pull off and that much harder to enjoy in the context of a movie that's trying to get the cinematic universe up on its feet. Determined to restore a lightness to Superman without dancing around how dark things have gotten in his absence, Gunn's movie is too busy reacting to the world at hand to create one of its own. So fast, scattered, and overstuffed that it's forced to rely on a manufactured sense of fun in lieu of natural momentum. Superman alludes to a wide range of ideas and emotions that it isn't given the time to make real. It wastes the best ensemble these characters have ever known on a story that never figures out how seriously it should take them. Indeed, the film would have been a bona fide disaster if not for the self-possessiveness of its cast. Rachel Brosnahan chief among them, betraying her standards by dating a writer as bad as Clark Kent, and betraying her ethics by keeping his newsworthy secret to herself. Daily Planet reporter Lois Lane might hem and haw over what it means for Superman to intervene in global affairs. Her inner conflict, though, is all the more compelling in the face of her boyfriend's refusal to second-guess himself. Brosnahan only appears in a small handful of scenes for some reason, but every one of them pops with the chemistry missing from the rest of the superhero genre. For his part, Superman doesn't have any trouble picking sides. and the fact that the biggest decision he makes in this movie takes place before the plot even starts allows Gunn to frame the actual narrative as less of a moral dilemma than a practical one. It also allows Gunn to pad the story with all sorts of popcorn-munching nonsense, including a team of unfeeling helper robots, funny, a super-powered doggy who needs to be housebroken, cute, and a shape-shifting prisoner named Metamorpho, Green. Most of these elements are fitfully amusing on their own, but in a film where Lois Lane only gets a few minutes of meaningful screen time and Superman is afforded less of an emotional foundation than Star-Lord ever got, it's hard not to get antsy when a Justice Gang member suddenly becomes the main character for a while. Edie Gathega is great and a half as Mr. Terrific, but I'd rather see that character lead his own movie than watch him walk away with this one. By the same token, the eye-rolling flirtation between scrappy reporter Jimmy Olsen, scholar Jacinto, and Atilda 1/4 deceived taskmaker, Sarah Sampaio, might have worked better in a film less determined to look for the best in people. It's no coincidence that the best scene in this extremely ridiculous film by far is also its most grounded. It arrives early on, as Lois challenges her boyfriend to a no-holds-barred interview about his role as an international peacemaker. The friction that bristles between the journalist's pragmatism and the superhero's guilelessness is matched by the electricity that sparks between the two actors playing them. Curran's what is never stronger than when his Kal-El cracks at the seams, while Brosnahan channels the same whip-smart, love-drunk brilliance that Holly Hunter brought to broadcast news, but here in a role that requires her to act like she's dating Albert Brooks and William Hurt all at once. Sharp, touchy, and exasperated in how it interrogates what kindness might even look like in a world that's become so cruel to itself. This is the only memorable fight scene in a $225 million action movie that never quite figures out how to make a spectacle of Superman's humanity. As a symptom of the movie's reactive nature, Superman doesn't really do anything, and most of Gunn's efforts to dramatize the duality of the character's existence made me wish that he did even less. A third act reveal forced me to suppress a spontaneous groan. The beat where he saves a squirrel from being crushed to death almost seems like self-commentary, and the set piece accompanied by the sunshine groove of Noah and the whale's 5 years time falls so far short of Gunn's usual needle drops that it feels ghost-directed by Sean Levy. Nothing in Deadpool Wolverine can match the magic that Superman achieves in the rare moments when it's focused on what matters. But I have to admit it does a much better job of balancing silliness with sincerity. Very few superhero directors are better than Gunn at threading that needle, but here in a movie so freighted with its own importance, a movie that strains to be more fun and more galvanizing than any he's made before, his contradictory ambitions can't help but get knotted together. Of course, the real problem is that those ambitions feel so contradictory in the first place, and that they continue to cancel each other out across a story that hinges on positioning Clark's humanity as the ultimate source of his strength. We love Superman not because he's good, or because he's powerful, but rather because he's good in spite of being powerful. Because he's awkward and goofy for a square-jawed god, and a shitty writer for someone capable of landing a story on the front page of Metropolis' biggest newspaper. Because he wasn't born any better than the rest of us, but the light of our sun makes him strong enough to choose kindness even when Lex Luthor gives him every reason to embrace cynicism. Gunn is right to recognize that a certain amount of silliness is key to Superman's charm, but here it mostly just distracts from the seriousness of what's at stake. It's hard to make a comic book come to life at the same time as you're trying to bring life into a comic book. Just as it's hard not to admire Gunn for trying, but it's even harder to care if a man can fly when there isn't any gravity to the world around him. Superman opens from Warner Brothers Pictures on Friday, July 11th. Want to stay up to date on IndieWire's film reviews and critical thoughts? Subscribe here to our newly launched newsletter, In Review by David Ehrlich, in which our chief film critic and head reviews editor rounds up the best new reviews and streaming picks along with some exclusive musings, all only available to subscribers. James Gunn's long-anticipated Superman has the best special effect I've seen in a summer blockbuster this year, and I don't mean the digitally aided flying or fighting. There is plenty of that too. most of it impressive and some of it astonishing. But that's expected in a superhero movie these days, especially one with as much riding on it as this glitzy and expensive reset of the DC cinematic universe. No, I'm talking about the electricity that blasts off whenever David Corenswet and Rachel Brosnahan share a scene. The newest versions of Clark and Lois, Superman and his girl Friday, their performances marked the first time in decades I felt the vital, crackling spark needed between these characters, particularly Brosnahan's Lane. Her relentless tenacity suggests that here is a star reporter with multiple Pulitzers cluttering a closet somewhere. Whenever the pair kiss, banter, or battle, particularly battle, Superman bears the type of soul it's easy to forget these complex studio products with all their many bells and whistles, and corporate obligations, can exude. So it is both Superman's great power to locate that soul as well as a kind of kryptonite that the film is then forced to only use it in moderation. Because believe me reader, during the first act set mostly around the Daily Planet building where Clark, Lois, and even Jimmy Olsen, Scholar Jacinto, go about their day, I was all in. Finally, we have a Superman movie that conveys to the viewer why these archetypes have endured for nearly a century. The film's writer-director even finds a singularly James Gunnian way to explain how much he gets who this character is, when Lois explains that she was punk rock cynical in college versus what she assumes was a young Clark admiring the inner child in every person he meets. The hopelessly innocent Clark protests, maybe that is punk rock. That charmingly, guilelessly Midwestern answer is Superman. Yet Superman, the 2025 movie, is still also that product which must wear many hats and accomplish many objectives that were set for it on a spreadsheet somewhere, especially in regard to table setting the aforementioned new shared universe. In a handful of scenes, or a look of wholesome generosity in Corenswet's gaze, Gunn confirms he can make a great Superman story about Lois, Jimmy, Lex Luthor, and Big Boy Blue. But Superman is not that movie, or at least it's not only that movie. After all, more than a few paragraphs in, I've yet to mention the other superhero-esque metahumans like Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, Nathan Fillion, Hawkgirl, Isabella Merced, and Mr. Terrific, Edie Gathagay. Or in addition to Nicholas Holt's appropriately smug and sinister Lex, there is not one but two giant alien monsters attacking Metropolis, Lex's various, often inexplicably superpowered minions, and even a foreign country trying to commit genocide on a neighboring ethnic population with the US government's complicity. Plus Crypto, the superdog. But don't worry about him. All you need to know about Crypto is that he's the bestest good boy, and possibly had his role beefed up after trailers proved he was the winner with audiences. If so, every extra moment given to this powerful pooch was a wise decision and money well spent. In fact, the furry dude begins the movie in a scene you likely have already seen. Superman is battered and broken after his first defeat at the hands of a mysterious masked foe. The beatdown came, we are told, in the aftermath of Superman interfering and preventing a genocide being committed by one fictional white country on their fictional neighbors with brown complexions. His opponent claims to be the Hammer of Moravia, but in reality he is a tool of Lex Luthor, a tech billionaire with a serious inferiority complex whenever he stares at Superman. Despite being rich, famous, and supposedly a genius, Lex feels inadequate when compared to a foreign immigrant welcomed with open arms by America and the world at large. So he enacts a convoluted and depressingly plausible plan to turn public opinion against Superman, beginning on social media and culminating with Superman agreeing to be offloaded by the government into Lex's prison hidden in a very offshore location where Lex disposes of other aliens and those he deems undesirable. And with this through line, Superman has a pretty straightforward and curiously timely setup. But I've also left out the fact Superman, the movie and the character, has to spend as many or more minutes opening a cinematic universe starter kit of cameos via the Justice Gang. They're still working on the name, Clark's own identity crisis as a Kryptonian trying to assimilate to life on Earth, and then getting home in time to find out how Lois will react after he was the first to say in their young relationship, "I love you." There are a lot of plates being kept in the air, and it is a testament to Gunn's command for writing and world building that it never feels overwhelming. Indeed, I'd say it's rather a marvel how much it resembles an old-school comic book, or more specifically Superman, the animated series. For my fellow A90s kids out there, perhaps this is the first episode you've ever picked up. Technically it offers a zippy and light-hearted self-contained adventure, but it's also stuck in the middle of a larger saga already in motion. So unlike other shared universes, the surplus of added superheroes does not feel like only fan service. They're part and parcel for a world. And Contatc in particular steals scenes as a grumpy Mr. Terrific. But even as Gunn proves to innately understand how to build this world, the film propping it up still comes across as cluttered and busy at times, particularly in the back half. The main narrative is about a genuinely good dude forced to confront a tech narcissist that's eager to send him to DC's veritable El Salvador black hole. But that narrative is submerged in a film that smoothly, but still somewhat desperately, tap dances its way through a coterie of C-lister introductions. Gunn conveys sincere affection for all these obscure deep cuts, but the movie's narrative struggles balancing them all. It thus becomes a missed opportunity when Kal-El has as many or more scenes with Mr. Terrific as he does with Lois Lane. Similarly, in a new context where Superman is the latest metahuman, instead of the first this world has ever known about, Lex's jealousy and the world's infatuation feels more inexplicable, even if it is vaguely suggested the other heroes are more akin to corporate shills before the Man of Steel came along. Ultimately the movie is overcrowded, and yet, that gnawing flaw is constantly overshadowed by splashes of the extraordinary. The action is again vividly realized and frequently elevated since Gunn and composers John Murphy and David Fleming decided to stop fighting gravity and just accept they must use the John Williams theme when and wherever possible, now with electric guitar riffs. Gunn similarly finds space to repeat his Yondu trick in Guardians of the Galaxy with Mr. Terrific's T-Spheres. It's still a winner. The real strength though remains the ensemble and how well cast and complementary they are. It's a big troupé. I haven't even mentioned Hawkgirl, Ma and Pa Kent, or a new Miss Tessmacher for the influencer Agia, but while broadly drawn, they're each memorable and get the big moment or two. At the center of it all remains Superman and Lois. We've had a lot of them over the years, with various versions of the characters coming across as glum, or whatever Superman Returns was supposed to be. In comic book academia terms, I suspect that Gunn is pulling a lot more from John Byrne's reinvention of the pair, with a helping dose of Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman sprinkled in, than the Golden or Silver Age comics that informed Christopher Reeve and Richard Donner nearly half a century ago. But speaking in more abstract, ephemeral terms, Gunn, Contatc, and Brosnahan didn't just channel a few more recent eras of comicdom. They also elicited a magic trick I haven't seen since Christopher Reeve. Unlike every other live-action actor since 1980, I wasn't watching some guy playing Superman. I was simply watching Superman, and he is opposite likely the best on-screen Lois we've ever had. It really is a nifty effect, and one where the sky is the limit if next time Gunn can hone in without all the other distractions. Superman flies into theaters on Friday, July 11th. David Crow is the movie's editor at Den of Geek. He has long been proud of his geek credentials, raised on cinema classics that ranged from a broken bar 3 years after announcing himself to the world. Superman, David Contatc, gets caught up in a brewing war while Lex Luthor, Nicholas Hoult, sets out to destroy him. It may be the first film in the newly established DC universe, marking the beginning of James Gunn's reign over a new comic book behemoth franchise. But with his Superman, the Guardians of the Galaxy writer-director chooses to start in the middle. Krypton is gone, Kal-El, David Contatc, is all grown up, and Superman, plus other metahumans and monsters, are part of everyday life for those on Earth. Clark Kent already works at the Daily Planet, is already dating Lois Lane, who already knows his superhero secret, and is already throwing himself into international affairs in the name of saving lives. We're told all this in the first minute via on-screen captions, and the sense of being dropped onto a story having missed the crucial first half never really goes away. To catch you up, here's the situation. Superman interfered in an attack from the fictional nation of Ba-Aravia on the fictional nation of Jorhan-Per. Draw whatever real-world parallels you like here without any consideration for the geopolitical ramifications. As a result, he's the target of global suspicion as to his reason for being on Earth, and retaliation in the form of genetically enhanced soldiers created by evil Baldy billionaire Lex Luthor, Nicholas Hoult, whose ultimate goal is to take Superman down. It's at this moment, just after Superman has lost his first ever fight, off-screen, that the story starts. It's not that retreading the Kryptonian's origin story would have been better, but the way Superman is constructed requires us to care about a war we have no context for, and the downfall of a hero whose ascension we haven't seen. We're given no sense of who Kal-El is before this, or the world's sentiment towards him, and so aren't equipped to feel any stakes in what happens next. For all that feels off in the setup, the performances are solid. Kal-El Ainsworth clearly fits the bill looks-wise, but also manages to convey the deep sense of duty that Superman feels towards Earth. Rachel Brosnahan is spiky and engaging as Lois, breathing life into a role with minimal dimension otherwise. The pair have clear chemistry. An early scene where Lois interviews Clark as Superman in a passionate clash of perspectives is one of the best in the film. Elsewhere, Nathan Fillion is amusing as Green Lantern, egotistical leader of the so-called Day Justice Gang, and Barry Breakout Anthony Kerrigan conveys some heart through a mountain of prosthetics as the element manipulating Metamorpho. Holt is having fun as Luthor, dishing out witty comebacks and maniacal screams, as well as genuine flashes of emotion. But there are problems in the writing. Luthor lacks depth, portrayed simply as an abusive sociopath who's targeting Superman out of spite, and indulging in reckless science at the cost of destroying the world entirely. Supes himself, meanwhile, is almost the pure-of-heart hero you want him to be, the one that Richard Donner and Christopher Reeve so masterfully achieved in their iteration. But some clunky dialogue and a conky edge means the character never quite meets the mark. As shown by the MCU's Captain America: Civil War, the question of how governments might try to control superpowered beings, and the morality of decision-making under that kind of regime, can be the basis for blockbuster brilliance. Here, the aforementioned interview scene is the only time Superman really digs into that, otherwise treating it as a convoluted foundation on which to build a fantastical but flat final showdown. The conflict between Ba-Aravia and Jorhan-Per is a clanningly on-the-nose representation of current events, but while the movie's stance is commendable, the inclusion of real-life humanitarian crisis as a side plot in a film this bombastic and snarky feels a little icky. Visually, Superman is bold and bright and full of color and cosmic invention, an area in which Gunn excels, and a nice change from the desaturated palette of Zack Snyder's interpretation that keeps the film entertaining for the first hour, but the final act sinks into CGI chaos, with an unsatisfying climax, an eye-roll-inducing reveal, a restlessly intermittent tone, and an insistence on prioritizing things and people we don't really care about over core characters. The biggest saving grace: Krypto, the cheeky, cape-wearing canine sidekick. Superman may not be a great movie, but one thing's for sure: Krypto is a very good dog. David Ainsworth takes on the blue and red mantle admirably, and glimpses of Gunn's signature sense of fun shot through but a lack of humanity, originality and cohesion means the movie around them just doesn't work. Before I saw James Gunn's new Superman movie, which sets out to lay the cornerstone of a new era for DC superhero characters, I was pessimistic. Over my years as a critic, I've loved a few Gunn projects for their humor and cleverness: Slither, Guardians of the Galaxy, but more recently hated others for their adolescent glibness: Peacemaker, and cheap sentimentality, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, respectively. But I've spent far more years, decades, in fact as a Superman fan. A few years back I channeled that fandom into an egregiously nerdy form of scholarship, when I wrote Superman, the unauthorized biography, a cultural history of the character that tracks which aspects of him have changed over the years, and why, and which have remained constant, and why. Here's the TL Doctor for that book. The two central, definitive attributes to any Superman story are selflessness and resolve. He must always, 1. Put the needs of others before those of himself, and 2. Refuse to give up. If either of those factors are missing, our minds rebel. It's simply not Superman. But having now seen Gunn's Superman, I'm prepared to add a third essential attribute to the idiomatic fuel mixture that makes Superman Superman, which this film illustrates with a bracing clarity and humor. He's corny. The Red Trunks Diaries. The first word we see Superman, David Corenswit, would say on screen. He mutters it to himself, having just had his big red butt entirely handed to him in a fight. Is golly. Throughout the film, he peppers his dialogue with the occasional gosh. Later, Lois Lane, Rachel Brosnahan, makes fun of his taste in music, bland, radio-friendly pop-punk. When questioned about his reasons for performing a certain super deed that saved thousands of lives, his response is incredulity. Why? I mean a broken bar to do good, for, you know, a broken bar good. At one point, instead of gloating over a fallen foe, he launches into an impassioned speech about his abject love of humanity and his own all-too-human fallibility. In terms of visual iconography, Gunn not only returns the classic red trunks to the Superman costume, he doubles down on them. He makes sure they evoke an old-school circus strongman, as the character's original illustrator Joe Shuster intended, which means, in the 2025 of sleek, sweat-wicking athleisure, they resolutely, even defiantly, resemble nothing so much as granny panties. Deal with it. And as for resolve, he's got that in spades. This Superman starts the film bruised, bloody, battered but unbowed, and will spend much of its running time getting further hammered and lasered and imprisoned and kryptonite poisoned by evil billionaire Lex Luthor, Nicholas Hoult. Luthor's goal is the annihilation of Superman, and he's using everything in his considerable power to get it. From nanite-enhanced goons to international conflicts to social media smear campaigns. This is another one of those films in which incessant television broadcasts act as a kind of electronic Greek chorus, helpfully informing us of major, albeit seemingly instantaneous, shifts in public opinion. But every time he's brought low, this Superman rallies, and returns to the fray. All of this, of course, is corny, hokey, cheesy, achingly sincere, cringe, even, which is to say, it's Superman. Recent attempts to tell live-action Superman stories have shied away from his bright, hopeful, altruistic nature in favor of making him more cool and relatable, read, dark and brooding. That's not who he is. It never has been. Superman is an ideal. He represents the best we can aspire to be. He's not the hero you relate to, Peter Parker / Spider-Man's ongoing struggle to pay his rent and buy Aunt May her damn medicine. He's the hero who inspires you, who shows you the way we Superman. Now every era gets the Superman it needs. Richard Donner's grand, mythic, unapologetically hopeful Superman, the movie, 1978, arrived in the wake of Vietnam and Watergate, when America had sunk into a defensive cynicism. Gunn's Superman arrives at yet another time in American history when everything that we ostensibly stand for, bedrock American principles like justice for all, defending the defenseless, helping those in need, they feel out of reach. It's inspiring to be reminded what those ideals look like, even if Superman shows them to us through a bright, aspirational lens. If that seems at all radical, chalk it up to the fact that our early aughts cultural fascination with anti-heroes like Walter White and Don Draper slashed over into our superheroes at some point. It's not just the old schoolers like Batman and Iron Man now. Every jabroni in tights has a dark outlook and a troubled past. This year alone, the Thunderbolts battled a superpowered personification of regret itself. And over on Disney Plus' Ironheart, our ostensible hero was so mired in guilt that she slid into a life of crime and drew the attention of the MCU's literal devil. But there's always been another way. It doesn't have to be about slogging through trauma and shame and shadow selves and endlessly tedious redemption arcs. Sometimes, it's simpler, cleaner, brighter, and also, not for nothing, more fun. Sheer elegance again and again, in Gunn's film. We watch Superman placing himself between innocent civilians and mortal danger, saving individual lives. Which brings me to the very simple reason why Gunn's movie works as well as it does. It makes you want to cheer. That's it. That's the secret ingredient that's been missing from so many superhero stories for so long. You come to a Superman movie to feel that surge of elation, that vicarious joy that moves you to cheer and applaud the events on screen. If you've ever found yourself in a crowded theater and got swept up in such a moment, Avengers Endgame's iconic on your left scene, for example, you remember it for the rest of your life. I felt that surge of joy several times, watching Superman, and the crowd around me felt it, too. Admittedly, we weren't always cheering for Superman himself. At one point aaligazer Mr. Terrific, one of several C-list DC heroes appearing in the film, gets a moment of his own that elicited cries of appreciation from my crowd. This is notable, because in the comics he's famously the third smartest man in the world, but just comes off as a stiff. Gatherguy's take is much more fun, and more in keeping with how anyone possessed of such world-class intelligence would act in real life, namely, perpetually and performatively annoyed at having to be surrounded by stupid people. Mostly, though, we were cheering for the dog. Krypto is a superpowered, and super poorly trained, dog in a cape, and he's resolutely awesome. He gets several cheerable moments. Bless his foofy little ears. I should perhaps mention here that the original draft of my book about Superman included 5,000 words on the fascinating history and abiding importance of Krypto, and all his awesomeness, which were cruelly cut down to a single paragraph by my editor, because, in his words, nobody cares about the damn dog. When Gunn's Krypto emerges as the breakout character find of 2025, history will have proven me right. You already believe a man can fly. Caveats. Well, Holtz Luthor is fun, though he doesn't get a chance to do much more than preen and explain his motivations to absolutely anyone and everyone within earshot. At any given moment you can't help thinking you're getting maybe 60% of what Holt could bring. At one point in the movie, a citizen of Metropolis, a person of color, Ray, is used as a prop to establish just how villainous our villain is. It's shocking, because the sudden act of violence seems so out of keeping with the bright tone of the film, but also because it seems like a kind of vestigial tale, a wildly unnecessary holdover from action films of the 70s and 80s. But on a broader level, Gunn's film is very good at what it sets out to do. It delivers a Superman deeply in touch with his humanity, and perfectly representative of the essence of the character. What it doesn't do, particularly, is break much in the way of new ground. Recent attempts to tell live-action Superman stories have shied away from his bright, hopeful, altruistic nature in favor of making him more cool and relatable, read, dark and brooding. That's not who he is. It never has been. It lacks the grand sweep and scope of Donner's 1978 film, which had a much heavier lift that had to establish the mythic quality necessary for audiences to believe a man can fly. But Gunn doesn't need to establish that. He can draft off of the decades of Superman film and television projects that have landed since 1978 to do the world-building work. So he doesn't waste our time with any of it. As the film opens, Superman is a known presence. Clark and Lois are dating. Luthor hates Superman. While it hits a lot of narrative beats that have been hit before in previous films, television series and comics, we get another Puck and Clark, "It's your actions that make you who you are" speech, for example. At least it hits them cleanly, and it doesn't apologize for them. But as a result, the film can't help but feel smaller and more circumspect than the grander, statelier Superman movies of Donner, Bryan Singer and Zack Snyder. I'm not bringing Superman 3 and Superman 4 into this discussion, and you'll thank me for it. The feeling of watching it is similar to that of perusing an individual comic book. It's bright, colorful, it's crammed with characters who don't get quite enough to do. 2 brief scenes with the Daily Planet staff can only feint toward establishing them as individual characters, but it's inviting you into a universe that you may want to spend more time in. And staring up at you from the page is Contatc's iconic, goofy, inspiring, cheesy Superman, preparing yet again to hurl himself in harm's way, because that's what he was made to do.